One of my favorite questions that I think we get fairly frequently when we're doing presentations is this one about age of consent. So, um, would a 18-year-old senior with a 14-year-old freshman be considered sexual assault? Um, and I love answering this question, one, because it hits on a lot of different issues, and it's something that's wildly misunderstood. So in Colorado, it's a little tricky. So the age of consent in Colorado is 17 years old, which means they can consent to having any kind of sexual interaction with pretty much whoever they want. However, there's something called the close in age exemption. And this means that anyone who is younger than 15 can engage in sexual activity with someone who is less than 4 years older than them. And then anyone who is 15 and 16 can engage in sexual activity with someone who is less than 10 years older than them, which is just confusing always. And I think it's always a little shocking to hear that a 15-year-old and a 24-year-old could legally engage in sexual activity. And I think it's important for anyone who is in high school, if you're a freshman and 14 years old, then engaging in sexual activity with someone who is a senior, 18 years old, could be considered sexual assault. And I think the more important part about that question is, what are the power dynamics in any kind of relationship, but especially when there's a big age difference in the relationship. So what are the kind of advantages that an 18-year-old has that a 14-year-old doesn't? Things like being able to drive, they're going to graduate soon, they have a lot more freedom. There's the potential that maybe they don't live with their parents or adults. They can go out and vote, which is an awesome privilege to have, but it is something that gives them a little bit more power. If you're looking at someone who's 16 and dating a 25-year-old, there's a lot of power imbalances in that kind of relationship that could be used, very manipulatively. So I think that is something to consider in any kind of relationship, but especially when there's a big age difference.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up the developmental differences, because even if it's legal for, a 15-year-old to date a 24-year-old, why? Why would anybody think that that's okay? Um, just the level of experience with
Mm-hmm.
how to interact, not with people in general, much less when it comes to intimacy, is so drastic. It
Yeah.
really doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they would be compatible in any way. So just the weirdness of it alone should deter people. It's weird that it's not illegal, that
Yeah.
broad of a chasm is possible.
And I think one of our high schoolers brought up in a presentation recently that, um, a 24-year-old or whoever has had so many more relationships probably than a high school student has. And they can use that knowledge and those experiences in a positive way, but because of that big age difference, it's more likely that it's used in a manipulative way, just because they've had so many more relationships and experience with relationships.